Criminology Board Exam Reviewers. Criminal Law Book 2. Definition of Terms. Part 1. Crimes against the law of nations. They are crimes that may be punished anywhere because they are considered crimes against the family of nations. Treason. It is a crime committed by any person who, owing allegiance to the United States or the government of the Philippine Islands, not being a foreigner, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid or comfort within the Philippine Islands or elsewhere. Allegiance. It is the obligation of fidelity and obedience, which one owes to the government under which he lives, in return for the protection he receives. Levying of war. It means that there must be an actual assembling of men for the purpose of executing a reasonable design by force. Adherence to the enemy. Adherence to the enemy means that the citizen intellectually or emotionally favors the enemies and harbors sympathies or convictions disloyal to his country's policy or interest. It means that there is intent to betray. Aid and comfort. It means any act which strengthens or tends to strengthen the enemy of the government in the conduct of war against the government, or an act which weakens or tends to weaken the power of the government to resist or to attack the enemies of the government. Two-witness rule. It is a rule in the crime of treason which states that the testimony of two witnesses is required to prove the same overt act of giving aid or comfort, which is one of the mode of committing the crime of treason. Conspiracy to commit treason. It is a crime committed in time of war by two or more persons who come to an agreement to levy war against the government, or adhere to enemies and to give them aid or comfort, and they decide to commit it. Proposal to commit treason. It is a crime committed in time of war by a person who has decided to levy war against the government, or to adhere to the enemies and give them aid and comfort, and proposes its execution to some other person or persons. Misprision of treason. It is a crime committed by every person owing allegiance to the United States, the government of the Philippine Islands, without being a foreigner, and having knowledge of any conspiracy against them, conceals or does not disclose and make known the same, as soon as possible, to the governor or fiscal of the province, or the mayor or fiscal of the city in which he resides, as the case may be, shall be punished as an accessory to the crime of treason. Espionage. Espionage is the offense of gathering, transmitting, or losing information respecting the national defense with intent, or there is reason to believe that information is to be used to the injury of the Republic of the Philippines or to the advantage of any foreign nation. Inciting to war or giving motives for reprisal. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee, and any private individual, who, by unlawful or unauthorized acts, provokes or gives occasion for a war involving or liable to involve the Philippine Islands, or exposes Filipino citizens to reprisals on their persons or property. Reprisal. It is any kind of forcible or coercive measure whereby one state seeks to exercise a deterrent effect or to obtain redress or satisfaction, directly or indirectly, for consequences of the illegal acts of another state which has refused to make amends for such illegal conduct. Violation of neutrality. It is a crime committed by anyone who, on the occasion of a war in which the government is not involved, violates any regulation issued by competent authority for the purpose of enforcing neutrality. Neutrality. Neutrality is a condition of a nation that, in times of war, takes no part in the dispute but continues peaceful dealings with the belligerents. Correspondence with hostile country. It is a crime committed by any person who in time of war, shall have correspondence with an enemy country or territory occupied by enemy troops. Correspondence. It is communication by means of letters, or it may refer to the letters which pass between those who have friendly or business relations. Flight to enemy's country. It is a crime committed by any person who, owing allegiance to the government, attempts to flee or go to an enemy country when prohibited by competent authority. Piracy. Piracy is robbery or depredation in the high seas, without lawful authority and done with animo furandi, with intent to steal, and in the spirit and intention of universal hostility. High seas. High seas mean any waters on the sea coast which are without the boundaries of the low water mark, although such waters may be in the jurisdictional limits of a foreign government, parts of the sea that are not included in the exclusive zone, in the territorial seas, or in the internal waters of a state, or in the archipelagic waters of an archipelagic state. Philippine seas. Philippine seas shall refer to all bodies of water, such as but not limited to seas, gulf, bays around, between and connecting each of the islands of the Philippine archipelago irrespective of its depth, breadth, length or dimension, and all waters belonging to the Philippines by historic or legal title, including territorial sea, the seabed, insular shelves, and other submarine areas over which the Philippines has sovereignty and jurisdiction. Mutiny. It is the unlawful resistance to a superior officer or the raising of commotions and disturbances on board a ship against the authority of its commander. Vessel. It is vessel or watercraft used for transport of passengers and cargo from one place to another through Philippine waters. It shall include all kinds and types of vessels or boats used in fishing. Philippine highway. Philippine highway shall refer to any road, street, passage, highway and bridges or other parts thereof, or railway or railroad within the Philippines used by persons or vehicles or locomotives or trains for the movement or circulation of persons or transportation of goods, articles or property or both. Highway robbery of brigandage. Highway robbery, brigandage is the seizure of any person for ransom, extortion or other unlawful purposes, or the taking away of the property of another by means of violence against or intimidation of persons or force upon things or other unlawful means, committed by any person on any Philippine highway. Arbitrary detention. It is a crime committed by a public officer or employee who detains a person without legal ground. Delaying the delivery of detained persons to the proper judicial authorities. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee who shall detain any person for some legal ground and shall fail to deliver such person to the proper judicial authorities within the period of 12 hours, for crimes or offences punishable by light penalties, or their equivalent, 18 hours, for crimes or offences punishable by correctional penalties, or their equivalent in 36 hours, for crimes or offences punishable by afflictive or capital penalties, or their equivalent. Delivery. Delivery means the filing of correct information or complaint with the proper judicial authorities. It does not mean physical delivery or turnover of arrested person to the court. Delaying release. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee who delays for the period of time specified therein the performance of any judicial or executive order for the release of a prisoner or detention prisoner, or unduly delays the service of the notice of such order to said prisoner or the proceedings upon any petition for the liberation of such person. Expulsion. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee who, not being thereunto authorized by law, shall expel any person from the Philippine Islands or shall compel such person to change his residence. Violation of domicile. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee who, not being authorized by judicial order, shall enter any dwelling against the will of the owner thereof, search papers or other effects found therein without the previous consent of such owner, or having surreptitiously entered said dwelling, and being required to leave the premises, shall refuse to do so. Search warrants maliciously obtained and abuse in the service of those legally obtained. It is a crime committed by any public officer or employee who shall procure a search warrant without just cause, or, having legally procured the same, shall exceed his authority or use unnecessary severity in executing the same. Search warrant. It is an order in writing, issued in the name of the people of the Philippines, signed by a judge and directed to a peace officer, commanding him to search for personal property described therein and bring it before the court. Searching domicile without witnesses. It is a crime committed by a public officer or employee who, in cases where a search is proper, shall search the domicile, papers or other belongings of any person, in the absence of the latter, any member of his family, or in their default, without the presence of two witnesses residing in the same locality.